Revenge films.
One day, my husband came to me with a problem. My husband had a male cousin who was married and had a son named Alan who was currently going to elementary school. Alan was a child with many problems. He would steal money from his classmates and use violence if things didn't go his way. My mother-in-law called my husband and asked if we'd be willing to watch Alan at our house for a while. My husband tried to decline by saying that we lived really far from Alan and that if he were to stay with us, he wouldn't be able to commute to school. But then his mother said that it wouldn't be a problem because Alan wasn't going to his school anymore. It seemed that my husband's aunt was concerned that Alan wouldn't grow up to be decent if he didn't get the discipline that he needed. She felt that if Alan lived away from his parents, he would learn to appreciate them more. We also had a son who was close in age to Alan, so at first I was concerned about the negative influence Alan would have on my son if he lived at our house. But Alan was family after all, and although we didn't really want to, we agreed to let him stay with us for 1 year. Once that was decided, the first place my husband and I visited was my son's school. We needed to fill out paperwork which would allow Alan to transfer to this school. When I met Alan for the first time, I was intimidated because he had a creepy facial expression, and I was anxious about whether I'd be able to take good care of him without any issues. Because Alan wasn't used to going to school, at first he was very reluctant to go to the same school as our son. We lived in the countryside, which is very different to the neighborhood that Alan's family lives in, and Alan wasn't very happy about living here because he felt that there was nothing to do here. "I hate this place, I'm so bored." He was a total brat, to be honest, and I don't know how his parents raised him because Alan was also very picky about what he wanted to eat and what he didn't. "I don't want to eat this. I'd rather buy myself something from the convenience store. Give me some money." He had no respect for us because he would demand for money whenever he wanted to buy something. Alan's parents sent us some money each month to pay for Alan's living expenses, but we didn't want to spend their money to fulfill Alan's selfish request. "This is today's dinner and we expect you to eat it whether you like it or not." Alan didn't want to, but because he wasn't used to people telling him what to do, he ate the food in front of him. And Alan was addicted to playing games. He skipped school and played games at home all day long. My husband and I would tell him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. We had to yank the game controller from Alan's hand, and in an angry outburst, he started throwing our stuff around. In comparison to Alan, my son was an absolute angel, so I was not used to Alan's crazy behavior. I was really stressed out from having to live with Alan. I regret our decision to agree to live with Alan for a year. It was a living nightmare. But one day, I found out something shocking about Alan. Alan was taking his bath as usual, and I went into the bathroom to stock the room with new bath towels as there weren't any for Alan to use when he got out of the bath. When I went into the room, Alan had just finished taking his bath and I'd happened to get a glimpse of his naked body. His stomach and back were covered in bruises. "Why do you come in here without knocking? Get out!" I went out of the room like Alan asked me to and shut the door. That evening, I told my husband about the bruises on Alan's body. My husband was equally shocked to find out that someone had been hurting Alan.
"I'm going to ask Alan about what happened to him."
After talking with Alan, my husband told me what he had learned. We couldn't believe it. It turned out that Alan's parents not only neglected him, but they physically abused him on a daily basis. The reason why Alan was picky about his food and short-tempered was because he grew up in an abusive household. Alan's parents didn't cook meals for him, and so Alan had no choice but to buy food with the money that he had stolen from his friends and classmates. He wasn't getting the proper nutrition that a young boy like him needed. The video game console was a gift from his grandmother. Another thing we found out was that the money we thought that Alan's parents were sending to us monthly was actually being sent by my husband's aunt. I now understood why Alan was such an unhappy child. It was probably his way of coping with all the pain that his parents inflicted on him. I know that it didn't excuse the fact that he had stolen from his friends or beaten them up. But I also understood that without taking money from his friends, Alan would have gone starving because his parents didn't feed him. Now that we had the whole story, I couldn't help but cry. I could only imagine the pain that Alan had endured on his own. I decided that I would put in the work and effort to help Alan open up to us. In the beginning, I didn't force Alan to go to school because he wasn't my son, but I decided that I would treat him like my own son from this day forward. "Alan, you need to get up and go to school. Stop playing games." "Why are you yelling at me all of a sudden?" "As long as you're living with us, you should consider me as your mother. I won't allow you to disobey my rules." At first, Alan didn't understand my sudden change in behavior, but he listened to me and started going to school. And on the weekends, I organized family outings so that he could enjoy the time with us. "Let's make the most of the sunny weather and spend the day at the beach. It'll be fun." "Do I have to go? I'd rather stay home and play games." "Don't say no until you've tried it. Now let's go." That day, we had a great time as a family and even had a barbecue on the beach. Other times, we went to see the fireworks or went to amusement parks. At first, Alan wasn't enjoying himself very much, but as time passed, we saw him having fun with our son, and he began to smile and laugh more. He also started to help out around the house and made new friends at school. He would spend time with his friends at the park after school. When Alan first moved in with us, he was a very picky eater, but after taking him on some fishing trips, he began to eat a variety of fish and even some vegetables. Since we lived in the countryside, most people had a vegetable garden, and so we taught Alan how to grow his own vegetables. After spending time with us in our vegetable garden, Alan started taking interest in different types of vegetables as well. I was relieved and happy that Alan had changed so much in a year. A year passed after Alan moved in with us. "I don't want to move back home. I'd rather stay here and live with you guys." I suggested to my husband that we adopt Alan. I had grown to love him after spending time with him, and I didn't want him to go back to his abusive parents. My husband agreed, and we decided to pay Alan's parents a visit.
"We'll give up our parental rights if you pay us $100,000.
"You're going to sell Alan to us for money?"
"Well, we can't just give him away for free. I mean, what if he grows up to be a Major League Baseball player? We'd regret it if we gave him up for free. Or he might end up going to an Ivy League university. I mean, you can't ask us to give up all that without some sort of compensation."
We couldn't believe that Alan's parents were asking for money when we were the ones doing them a favor. My husband and I were furious.
Why would you think that Alan could be some hotshot if you're not willing to put any effort into raising him? You guys are terrible parents, and we can notify the police that you've been abusing him.
My husband was livid, and he told me that he was going to gather evidence to show that Alan's parents were completely negligent. We then visited the Child Consultation Center and gave them photos of Alan's body with bruises inflicted by his parents, as well as past conversations showing that they had been abusing him. When my husband first asked Alan about the bruises on his body, he had been secretly recording their conversation. The Child Consultation Center contacted Alan's former school to see how he had been when he went to the school, and how his parents were as well. And it turned out that Alan's parents didn't buy him any of the things that he needed for school, which made it difficult for him to participate in the classes. The school teachers had asked Alan's parents repeatedly to provide him with the school supplies that he needed, but they wouldn't listen. Once he had compiled all of the evidence, we reported it to the police, and Alan's parents were arrested. Alan's parents didn't understand why they were being arrested, and they put up a fight. They ended up getting a heavier sentence because they didn't show any signs of remorse. I was glad they weren't coming out of prison anytime soon. When we informed my husband's aunt about how Alan's parents had been treating him, she was in tears. With cooperation from my husband's aunt, Alan was able to continue living with us. Another year passed, and after filling the necessary paperwork, we were able to officially adopt Alan. Alan's grandmother offered us her lifetime savings so that we could use the money to raise Alan. But we didn't want to accept the money since we considered Alan to be our son. We felt that as his new parents, we should be the ones to pay for his living expenses. A few more years passed, and I was pregnant with my second child. My son and Alan welcomed their younger sister into the family, and we were now a happy family of 5. I still remember the first time that Alan called me Mom. It's a moment that I'll never forget. I'm so happy that Alan considered us to be his real family, too. My husband told me that Alan calls me Mom all the time, even when I'm not around, and I was very touched by that. Several more years passed, and our children were all grown up. My husband and I were so proud of the young man that Alan had become. He was happy and confident, and that made us feel like we raised him right.
Mom, Dad, stop crying! You're embarrassing me in front of my friends!
The way Alan looked on that day reminded me of the first time that he called me Mom. When I met Alan for the first time, I wasn't sure that I'd get along with him, but after adopting him, he's become a second son to me. I'm grateful that fate brought us together.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.